Welcome to Next Steps, a podcast from Blackhawk Church. We believe that following Jesus is a lifelong journey, so no matter where you're at, there's always a next step to take. Each week on this podcast, we'll create space for real conversations about the questions we wrestle with, the challenges we face, and the hope we find in Jesus. Our goal isn't to have it all perfectly figured out, but to walk faithfully towards Jesus together. We're so glad you're joining us. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Care Takeover of the Next Steps podcast. It's Kierce, care pastor, and
Alicia Penning, along with, we may drag Isaac Mitchell, the producer, into this conversation from time to time.
Well, today we're talking about the stuff we don't talk about enough. And I'm excited for today's conversation. There's a lot today that we're going to cover. I think as I was kind of preparing for today, that I was excited because, Alicia, I think there's stuff that we're going to talk about today that I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about. There's stuff that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, and we both together have talked a lot about. So let's dive right in. So within a church community, there are people who there's always people in our midst who are suffering, and they're doing so silently. And sometimes that can be with mental health, that can be with loneliness, that can be with different relationship strains or tensions. These are real things that people experience in our community, and we want to be a community where we talk about these topics honestly and openly, and we provide space for one another to process or to share or seek support for the things that we're going through.
Yeah. And I think church is interesting because I think we all want this to be the place where what's heavy on our souls, we can really bring that.
Yes.
And yet it does often feel like a place where we all sort of have this reflex to clean ourselves up. And so there are things that do become really hard to talk about at church.
Right? The idea, right, that we have to look tidy when we come here.
Yeah. I was joking beforehand, asking Isaac, what do you think?
Yeah, Isaac, what do you think we don't talk enough?
He avoided my answer beforehand, but I'm going to make him answer that question.
What don't we talk about enough at church?
Yeah. My initial, I've thought about it since you asked that, but I think mental health, but there's such a broad spectrum of that. So I'll give a personal example. So I have OCD, and growing up, there was a lot of kind of like, and you were sharing a story before we recorded this about you felt like sometimes you didn't do church well enough, or you were bad at church, quote unquote. Yeah. And I completely relate to that. Not for the same example you gave, but just like if I didn't memorize scripture, or if I didn't read my Bible enough, or if I misinterpreted the Bible, I felt like sometimes, I was just a bad Christian or a bad student in Sunday school. And I wish I was told growing up, it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to get things wrong. And what is actually wrong is completely subjective as well. And it's not like a black and white thing every time. So
it's interesting because you're talking about that in relation to your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how did your mental health kind of tie into that?
Yeah, well, it got me, I wouldn't say depressed, but it made me overthink quite a bit on how I went about my relationship with the Lord of okay, am I not doing these things? And I struggled with a lot of things in high school about self-worth and am I good enough? And I would say Christianity and my faith definitely played a big role in that.
Interesting.
Okay, I am so glad I asked this question.
I know. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Isaac. Mental health is the first thing that we came up with that we wanted to talk about because I think it is something that deeply affects our spirituality. I feel like they often go together, and yet it can feel really hard to talk about in church. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that I think one of the things that I wonder about, and would you say OCD is an anxiety disorder? Is that how you would classify it,
Well,
Isaac? Or do you experience anxiety with that?
I think they go hand in hand.
Okay.
And I'd say the way my OCD shows up the most, and because it's different for every person, and the type of OCD, but also the level of intensity, if you will.
Yeah.
So movies always portray it like I have to flip the light switch 9 times or my cat will die
washing,
or something.
Yeah.
It's like stuff like that. I don't really have. I do wash my hands like a ton.
Okay.
But then when it comes to like stuff I just talked about, like, with my faith and Christianity in the church, it definitely caused a ton of anxiety.
One of the things that I sometimes hear about, and I wanted to bring up because I think Alicia's really looked into this, is in the Bible, we're given a lot of messages like do not fear not, don't be afraid, don't worry, right? We're told not to worry. And kind of those teachings and holding that next to anxiety and feeling anxiety. And what does that say? Does feeling anxious mean that I'm sinful? Does experiencing anxiety mean that, right, I'm not doing faith right, or I'm not being faithful? Yeah, Alicia, I asked that because I know it's something that we've talked about and you kind of looked into quite a bit.
Because I think it is, you do hear people say pretty often, like talk about anxiety like it's a sin. One person who's been really helpful to me, I actually wanted to throw his name out there in case anyone's interested in reading some of the things he's written about this. His name is Zach Eswine, and he's a professor at, I think, Covenant Seminary, maybe in St. Louis. He's a pastor there too. But he talks about anxiety and mental health in a way that's really helpful for me. Because I think I've always read, especially some of the ways that Paul talks about it in the epistles. He says, like, in Philippians, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything in prayer and petition, present your request to God. And I think for a lot of years, I read that as a command. And, when we disobey the commands
God
of the Lord,
don't be anxious.
Yeah, it's sin if we disobey the commands of the Lord. But I have begun to understand that differently. Eswine says, really, this is Paul being pastoral. He's not giving a command as much as he is being pastoral, in the same way that, you brought up fear earlier. Like, I think of oftentimes when God sends an angel to someone that people are deeply afraid, the first thing the angel says is, don't be afraid. I think of Mary receiving like the visit from the angel, learning that she was pregnant with Jesus. And the first thing the angel says is, don't be afraid. Well, of course, Mary's not in sin. Like, that's not a command that she's breaking. This is God's heart for her. Like, don't be afraid. I think when the Bible talks about anxiety, even when Jesus talks about it in Matthew, and he says, don't worry about what you'll eat or your drink. I think that's pastoral too. So I talked about this quite a bit. My husband, Adam, preached a sermon about this a couple of months ago, I think. Okay. So he and I spent, a few hours just talking about, he was deeply concerned about how do I talk about this and help people see. I think the sermon he was supposed to preach on was about greed, and Jesus connects worry with greed in that passage. And so, okay, what is the text really saying? How can we be responsible with this? And I think oftentimes, anxiety, worry, it can lead to dark places in our hearts. Yeah. But I think these commands, these instructions that God gives us, he knows there's a lot in this broken world that's going to make us anxious. And when Paul says, don't be anxious about anything, when Jesus says, don't worry about anything, I think it's a sort of a tender pastoral calling back like to trust God.
A care.
Yeah.
Caring for you.
And a care in a way like, I want to protect you from some of the darker sides of this and where it can go. That certainly can lead to sin, but I don't think that anxiety itself is a sin, and certainly not when someone's struggling with with some sort of clinical anxiety
or depression or trauma related. Yeah, I think it's important for us to say at church that these things are not a failure of faith.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Anne. Yeah. What do you think? We talked a little bit about like how what is the church's role in supporting people that are struggling with these sort of things? If we talk a lot on our team, and one of the things that we do is provide people with a directory of Christian counselors.
Yes.
And so we definitely want to help connect people with professional help and people who can really help them do deep work. But I do think we want church to be a place where we can talk about these things and feel like God cares about it. And what are some ways that you've seen appropriate ways for the church to for us to engage with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there are ways that are kind of more formal, right? We have a care team here, and someone can call during business hours, and we have a team that responds and can do that over the phone. Also, we have pastors that will meet and provide pastoral care. And for some people, it's being part of a group.
Yeah.
They want to be part of a group of people. Yeah. Or maybe it's kind of an individual relationship. We have a ministry here called Alongside that provides kind of that person-to-person care where you have someone to journey with you, to listen, to be praying. And certainly this isn't, instead of therapeutic care or medical care.
It's both and.
Yeah, but I think both are really important. Both have an important role. And so we want to be a community where people feel like they are supported on that journey.
Yeah. I just think part of really feeling like you belong at a church and a community of faith is to feel like the parts of like that you can bring your whole self there, and that it's really known and accepted. And so, yeah.
I think that kind of leads into the next topic that we were going to talk about, which is loneliness and isolation.
Yeah.
And this is something I just personally, I love Sundays. I think my most favorite day of the year really is our Christmas Eve services. As you know, I love it. I love all the people. I love everybody coming and going.
I love seeing what you're going to wear on Christmas Eve. Anne has great Christmas Eve outfits.
I mean, handing out candy canes on Christmas Eve is like the best job in the world. I also love to see, especially what kiddos wear here.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm a sucker for some Christmas tights or a bow tie or a sweater vest. Yes. Unfortunately, my children at 17 and 18 don't let me dress them anymore. So my son will not wear sweater vests. I don't know what's up with that. But one of the things, although I love so much the busyness and the amount of people in our atrium spaces and our worship venues at all of our sites, something that we have to acknowledge is that loneliness, and sometimes the deepest levels of loneliness, can occur when you're surrounded by a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. You can be here, you can come and go and still feel really lonely and feel like people don't know you.
Yeah.
And I think being known is the thing that comes before feeling loved.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you're able to drive here and kind of move through our spaces and attend a service and head out and not feel like you had any meaningful connection with someone.
Yeah, and so I think the bigger a church is, the harder that can be sometimes.
That's really hard. Yeah, that's really hard. So this is something that I've thought a lot about, and kind of practical ways to make our big church feel really personal. And so I went, is that kind of what we've talked about this before? Yeah. This is something that
I loved your term for it too, and I'm excited for you to share that.
It's one of the reasons why I love the atrium, like being in the atrium, being in worship venues around Blackhawk. So one of the things are things that I would call micro connections. So something as simple as a smile in one of our large spaces, I think can really go a long way. So if everyone, right, makes an attempt to just smile at someone new, I think that can be really meaningful. Or to say hello, just to say hello, how are you? And to kind of keep your eye out, like who's sitting alone, who looks like maybe they're not having the best day, or maybe they are someone that could be easily overlooked. Making an opportunity to smile, to say hello, to check in with them, I think is really great.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm sort of keyed up on lately are sincere compliments. Making the effort to give people sincere compliments. And I think I was telling you, I am committing, and now I'm doing it publicly. So y'all, like Isaac, Alicia, you can hold me accountable. The next time, either myself or my daughter, if we're having a bad day, we're going to go to a place like Target with the mission to give people sincere compliments. When you give someone a sincere compliment, I just think you feel better. You feel happier. They feel happier. You feel more connected. And I love the power of the sincere compliment.
Yeah. I love that too. And I love how, like, a sincere compliment, even with someone that you don't know very well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Our spaces, especially on Sundays, provide a lot of room for those micro connections.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the things second time I'll mention something that I love about my husband as a leader, but downtown, when he hosts the service, he talks about, before the meet and greet, he always gives a couple of sentences about how this isn't just something we tack onto the service, but this is actually part of our worship.
Right.
Because it matters.
It does matter.
That we make small connections with people in our community. And so I think, even in that 2 minutes where I don't know that all the venues are doing that right now, but many of our venues have a time where you just meet the people around you, and that can be really powerful. What about, Anne, when it's hard to, beyond those micro connections, I feel like I lead a community group of young adults, and I've talked to, actually just in the last week, like 3 of them who are, struggling with wanting to make deeper connections.
Absolutely.
And they're kind of doing all the right things. They're in a group. They come faithfully on Sundays. And yet it can still feel hard to, I think it can still feel hard to make connections. And we don't often talk about that kind of isolation in our church either. Yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
I hear you saying, I feel like as a person who's new to the area, right, that's especially true. And a lot of young adults are coming for grad school. They're coming for work.
Yeah.
And how it's one thing to be a part of like a surface level conversation, and it's another thing to find your people that you feel like, wow, you know me, you care about me. Have you found that?
I don't think I have found that here yet, honestly.
Okay.
Just because I'm more of an introverted person. So I'm listening to this conversation and I'm thinking about my own life and like what I'm doing to make connection, because I'm maybe 9 months into this job, I think. I haven't been here for even a year yet. So there's still a lot of connection to be made and friends to be made and people to talk to. And I'm just not good at doing that, like being the first person to do that. So a lot of times I just wait for that to happen to me, which sometimes isn't the best idea. For example, I intentionally, so when I got hired here, I was hired in May, and then I was going to be married in August of last year. And so I intentionally didn't become part of a community group so that I could wait for my wife and I to join together, because I didn't want her to feel alone. Like, oh, I had all these connections, and then, come August when we're married and living together and stuff, then I'm going off to a community group. And she was like, wait, what about me? Yeah. And so I think that was my heart. And then we ended up both just not becoming part of a community group.
It bled.
So.
And it could just feel harder and harder,
Yes.
I think,
It
once
does
you've
feel harder and harder.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I think we both are in this place now where we're settled. We're in a good place.
Yeah.
We feel comfortable here. And now I would use the word longing, like we're longing for that.
Yeah.
And we're ready for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's hard to make a first step, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if it's outside of your pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Like, I know, like, for me, one of the things that I've learned is that if I put something in as a rhythm, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to go to coffee with this friend once a month and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to establish, okay, we're going to coffee once a month. And through that, there's a deepening of the relationship. But it's scary to ask, because what if they say no?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or what if they don't have time? I mean, it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And I've definitely had times where I've asked someone, hey, would you like to be someone that, like, we get together every month and it's more of like a spiritual friendship, and we're sharing more deeply and we're praying, and it didn't work out, right? And so that's hard.
Oh, it's very vulnerable.
It's really vulnerable.
Who knew that making friends as adults would be so vulnerable?
It's so hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the kind of tricks that I see around Blackhawk, and I don't know if you all will relate to this, but one of the tricks that I think there exists to finding deeper relationships at Blackhawk is actually through serving.
Yeah, I agree.
The people that, like, some of the hidden gems, I feel like, are student ministries, serving in middle school ministries, high school ministry, serving at college ministry. Where you are stepping up to lead a small group and you have a co-leader, and you can kind of see how those leaders, those volunteers, really start forming deep community with one another.
Yeah.
Do you all notice that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, connecting here is often there's like the joining a group, which can be helpful, but then serving alongside people does something else too. And I sort of think you've got to do both to really begin to feel like, to have a sense of belonging here. So yeah, I agree. I think I was thinking about some of the power and, as we think about isolation, some of the things that keep people, I think there's like normal stuff in life that can make it hard to move towards that. There's also some deeper things,
Yes.
Which I think will move us into our next topic. Deeper
absolutely.
relationship struggles and things like that really can kind of result in extra isolation for people.
Absolutely.
So I wonder if you could share a little about that, Anne.
One of the things I think about is parents that I talk to whose kids are in a really difficult season, and maybe their kid's not coming to church, and so it can kind of make it hard to show up and engage authentically, because you've kind of got this stuff happening and in the background, or you feel like you're bringing a lot to a group. Maybe I've got some estrangement in my family or relational stuff going on, and that feels like a lot to bring to a community group, or a lot to share with people that I'm serving with. Yeah.
I think, or even like a lot to share, but then a lot of these situations don't resolve immediately. And so it feels like I keep sharing this. I do think with some of those things, in some specific situations, this is where like the group care that our team offers can be helpful, especially around divorce and separation. Divorce care has been, I mean, I cannot tell you the stories the leaders share, which obviously, I can't share publicly or anything, but
do you have like themes or things that you've noticed in working with people who have experienced painful separation or divorce?
Yeah. Well, I would say, one thing that consistently the leaders share is that somewhere along the halfway point, the group meets for 13 weeks, and usually people come in, and I always go to the first meeting. I coach the leaders, but I don't facilitate the group myself, so I'm not there every week. But I always go to the first session, and it is so quiet when people come in. I feel like you can almost feel the pain and the shame that people come into that group with. The group leaders talk about how somewhere along like week 6 or 7, like people really begin to turn the corner. And it's like, the shame really dissipates. They feel connected to each other, connected to the leaders. But the power of that sense of belonging and connection really is healing for people. And so I often will go to the last or second to the last meeting of that group as well. And, you walk into the room and it's really different. There's laughter, there's talking, there's way more of a sense of lightness. And so, I think there's some spaces like that are really powerful for people as well.
And from what I've heard too, I think it seems like true community and friendships come out of that.
Yeah.
Right. Where people have been vulnerable, they've shared really hard parts of their lives, and that brings them together, and there's a friendship that's formed that's really genuine and extends far beyond that group.
Yeah. Yeah. I met with a woman over the weekend who went through divorce care twice a couple of years ago. And this past weekend, she was at one of the women's there were like 15 women that went together, all of whom had experienced divorce and separation. And they went to someone's lake house together for the weekend. And so just the meaningful long-term relationships that come out of that group.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Because like that seems like the way to kind of fight against isolation and really creating a culture where it's okay to be not okay, and it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to acknowledge that you need support and people around you.
Yeah. That happens, I think, in group care. It also happens, I think that happens in alongside relationships too sometimes. It happens on a smaller level alongside as our person-to-person care. But a lot of those, it doesn't always happen this way, but sometimes those relationships just sort of
turn into
a friendship. Yeah. And so I think there's places where we really can connect with people on a deep level, even in the most painful places in our lives. Yeah. And I really hope our church is a place that where we're intentional about those spaces and where we help like intentionally connect people with that. Part of the reason we wanted to do this podcast is just so that people know what's available, what kind of supports are available at our church.
That's
because a lot of care happens, we don't talk about it from the platform.
It's private. Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's not available or that it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think talking about the fact that it's happening kind of turns this place, our community, not to be not a place of hiding.
Yeah.
But to be a place of hope, to be a place of healing. So yeah, I'm grateful that we're talking about a lot of this. Well,
what else did we want to talk about, Anne?
I know. I feel like maybe we're wrapping up where we've sort of led is to a place where I think we're we're going to talk about next week, I'm excited for this. It's about when caring for others starts to drain you and what to do about it.
Yeah.
Right. So now we've kind of talked about some of the topics and supports, but we're all in relationships, friendships, family, in community with people who maybe have needed our support, who we're offering support, and maybe some of that is starting to feel hard. So I'm excited to dive into that next week.
Yes. We'll see you then.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Next Steps. Don't forget to check out the show notes for a list of resources if you'd like to keep the conversation going. If you want to learn more about how to get connected at Blackhawk or simply find tools to help you grow, check out blackhawk.church/hub. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. Until next time, let's keep following Jesus together.